I think people have this idea that what I do is camping. Camping is you go to a spot, you pop your tent, you spend some time there, and you enjoy that place. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think there's a time and a place for it. But that's not what I do. I road trip. And road tripping and camping are very, very different. For me, there's something special about logging all those miles. I think that's a really good representation of who I am as a person. I've never really had this direct plan of where I wanted to go, how I wanted to get there. I just kind of had an end goal in sight. I think picking an elopement made the most sense for the life that we were living. So we ended up settling on Yosemite. And that was going to be like the place where we exchanged our vows, and I think that that is very much cathedral-esque when you're kind of in the Yosemite Valley and you're sandwiched in between these massive granite cliffs. There's really no better place to do it. A few years later, for our 4th anniversary, my partnership with Nokian Tyres opened up an opportunity to talk about something that I don't really talk about a lot. And who would have thought that tires and an anniversary road trip would go together, but they really do, at least in our case. After leaving Yosemite, we were kind of trying to figure out what our best options were going to be, because 97-degree weather with 50-mile-an-hour gusts in the desert didn't sound like that great of a time.
We were fortunate that we had a terrific plan B to drive up into the western Sierra Nevadas, where my family has a cabin that my grandfather built. The fact that we were able to reroute and go spend a day or two there in perfect weather was amazing.
To me, that was an exciting location because there's a lot of famous wheeling trails, off-roading trails, things like that in the area. And that gave me an opportunity to go push the limits of these tires and really experience what these Outpost ATs are capable of doing.
Exciting for me to get to show you some of the places that I spent my childhood, but it was even more exciting now having a more capable vehicle. We could go and explore areas I didn't even know were so close.
The next spot that was pretty iconic on that elopement trip was Sequoia Kings Canyon. That was one of those things, like, I've been through the redwoods, they're amazing. I hear Sequoia's even better.
I felt like Sequoia Kings Canyon was the epitome of, a tree lover's place.
To walk among those multi-100-foot giants kind of puts into perspective of everything they've been through. It just was one of those kind of a semi-romantic feeling. Like, it solidified one more thing about what we were accomplishing by exchanging these vows. It was proposing on granite rocks in Yosemite. It was adventuring through these massive giant sequoias, and then moving on to a few other places. We kind of jetted down a little bit further south, knowing that we had this big epic trip to make it to the Alabama hills. So the Alabama hills had been always one of those bucket list locations. So what a better way to do it than hit them on our elopement trip.
It was so fun to be in the Alabama hills in a vehicle that you just felt could navigate any of that terrain.
We definitely pushed the limits of the Rover. I was impressed with how easily it handled everything. And we were climbing all over boulders, big dips, washouts, and making it look like it was perfectly smooth asphalt. It was pretty impressive.
We got to crawl all over those rocks and find the best view for our campsite.
Camping in the Alabama hills is definitely a rugged experience. There's miles and miles stretching out where there are people out there, but you can't really see each other. So it just creates such a remote experience that you feel like you're in another world.
There are also these iconic spots for photos in the Alabama hills.
We got up super early, catch the sunrise, went over to our spot on Movie Road, and
my first trip up 395 was in the Range Rover Classic. I knew that there was this little village called June Lake that I had to get to. For me, June Lake became this really special place, and I knew that it would be always a destination when I was on 395. We drove up and found this little spot that looked over the top of the lake, and
you tried describing it to me, but you had to see it.
it was one of those things. It's like you have to see it to believe it. Clear skies, Sierra Nevada mountains, blue water. My very first trip to June Lake, I picked up a couple of souvenirs, and that's these big sugar pine cones that sit on the dash of the Rover. So the next stop was Tahoe, and for me, Tahoe is always one of those places that is like, everybody wants to go there, it's always amazing. I'd never experienced any of that.
Sometimes when you go to one of these places, you get to connect up with someone who knows the area because they can show you the highlights, the best parts, and that's what we got to experience this time when we met up with our friend Kenny.
From Tahoe, we had quite a drive back up into Oregon, so we had plenty of time to reflect on the trip and how this trip was a little bit different than the first one.
Getting the opportunity to do it a second time, we really could prioritize what places meant the most to us.
My first experience in Nokian Tyres was on an Audi A4 Avant, and that led to this partnership with Nokian and our 996. So Nokian and I started talking about what other tires they might have to offer, and that's when the Outpost AT came up in the conversation. They are the best tires that I have ever run on that vehicle. To experience a AT tire that can handle the asphalt and concrete as well as those do, and then take them off-road onto washboarded roads, fire roads, almost rock crawling conditions. I don't think I've ever experienced a tire that can do both of those things the way that this tire does it.